today's debate is aptly titled to address this issue, as we just heard. Healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the right of the doctors to migrate. Now we have assembled a galaxy of debaters representing a wide range of viewpoints. And I noticed that those two teams are keeping the widest possible distance between them. But this is only a friendly debate, I have been telling them all this time. Right? We have got seniors, we have got juniors in service, then we have got ladies, gentlemen, and we have specially summoned a non-medical professional to educate and entertain us about how a non-medical person sees this whole issue. Now there are no judges, as you can see, you all will be the judges. But we won't declare a winner. Now first, I would like a show of hands now before the debate as to what you feel about it. Now, those who see that the patient's rights should take precedence over the doctor's right to migrate, can you raise your hand? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The other one, those who feel that doctors have a basic human right to work where they want, they can migrate if they want. Hands up those who feel.
එතකොට මැද එක බැලන්ස් එක දෙගොල්ලන්ටම රයිට්ස් තියෙන එක.
Okay. Yes. Now what we do is, at the end of the debate, we'll ask the same question. Then you have to answer depending on the performance of the two sides, not on what you decided last night, right? See how they perform, then only we can see. Right. So may I invite my co-moderator, Dr. Padma Gulranga, to introduce the two teams, please. Thank you.
Yes. At the outset, let me again thank SLMA for organizing this interesting debate. Let me tell you that Dr. Sarat Gamini has taken many aspects into consideration in selecting these best possible teams for this debate. We have taken the sex into consideration, the gender and the level of education and seniority, so many things, and has spent so much of time on this. So I want you to give him a good applause for doing that. So we have two teams. We would be debating on doctors' migration crisis. Healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the rights of doctors to immigrate. So proposing team is, the leader is Dr. Santusha Fernando, specialist in community medicine, senior lecturer, Department of Medical Humanities, Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, and Ms. Melanie Gunatilaka, well-known climate and political analyst, activist, and Dr. Teekshana Pathirana, the consultant oncological surgeon, Apeksha Hospital, Maharagana. And the opposing team would be Dr. Ajit Amarasinghe, consultant pediatrician and clinical allergist, Colombo, and Dr. Manudi Vidana Pathirana, registrar in medicine, National Hospital of Sri Lanka, Colombo, and Dr. Chris Jit Xavier, Immo Mental Health Base Hospital, Tillapalli. So let me invite both these teams to come on stage and to take their seats.
Okay, thank you. Shall we start off inviting the leader of the proposing team, Dr. Santusha Fernando, to start batting. By the way, first round, each speaker will have 6 minutes, while the round up by the two leaders will have 4 minutes.
and stunning opponents and members of the House. A few days ago, the fateful flyer bearing the topic of this debate, healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the right of the doctors to emigrate, was shared on social media. A mini social media hell has broken loose since then, and some people are very, very angry, they say, and this topic. The healthcare worker migration is an intensifying global problem. The great medical migration is happening everywhere in the world. Doctors and nurses are crossing borders in record numbers. Some nations are recruiting aggressively while others are watching their medical talent disappear. Canada has doubled its intake of internationally trained doctors since 2010. In the United Kingdom, 33% of the doctors are foreign trained, Australia 32%, United States 28%, Canada 26%, and Germany 12%. By the look of this motion and the show of hands from the floor, this sounds like a no-brainer in favor of our stunning opposition. After all, the Article 13 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right of freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state, and everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and return to his country. Then, why is SLMA even debating this topic? The SLMA is not debating whether the right of the doctors to emigrate should be banned. It is merely debating, as the topic suggests, if the rights of the people should take precedence over the right of the doctors to emigrate. In fact, the Article 29 of the same Universal Declaration of Human Rights elaborates that, and I quote, everyone has duties to the community in which their free and full development is possible. This signifies that individual rights are not exercised in isolation, but within the context of social environment where the well-being of others are also important. The community provides the necessary framework for individuals to flourish, and in turn, individuals have obligations to contribute to its well-being, the same Declaration of Human Rights, and I unquote. During the time of an active war, let's say, an officer of the army can't quote the Declaration of Human Rights and emigrate to avoid fighting the war. We had someone like that become president in this country also. In fact, during the COVID pandemic, in many countries, healthcare workers who refused to be vaccinated or refused to treat COVID patients lost their jobs in many countries. A vaccination certificate was mandatory to cross international borders. The health right of the people took precedence over our individual rights. In Sri Lanka, medical education is state-funded, postgraduate education is largely free. If a Natami, a labourer, earning 1,000 rupees a day, buys a 100 rupee milk pack, he pays 1.8% of his daily income as VAT for that packet of milk. If a medical officer earning 4,200 rupees a day buys the same, she only spends 0.429% of her daily income as VAT at the rate of 18%. Ladies and gentlemen, by this baby calculation, you can understand that a poor Natami pays more for our free education as a percentage of income than a richer person. Essentially, people who can't afford to pay for our state-funded education are paying for it, while they themselves are restricted by social inequality to access it. The intergenerational fallacies that have been transmitted to us, such as we all got free education, so Natami is Natami because he is lazy and foolish, or Allata Singavat Rasanati Kavili Kaka, learn even if you must beg with the outstretched hand, are just sentimental poetry. The global data sets on poverty and inequality consistently confirm that the poor pay for the less poor, foregoing the very goods and services for which they pay. So yes, a hard fact to follow, we do owe it to serve the poor, the disadvantaged and the marginalized who funded that education. Are you uncomfortable being indebted to the Natami? You should be. The affluent Western countries who teach us about human rights, poverty, debt restructuring and reparation has no problem snatching the state-funded products of our countries with no consideration about who suffers. When we go to Western countries for foreign training, they train us for a fee or in kind, and then they employ us for free. In fact, in the recent Miriam study, the estimation of 4.1 million USD lost to Sri Lanka because of doctor immigration is actually a gross underestimation. The Nirianda study does not calculate the billions of rupees invested by free healthcare to provide thousands of patients for doctors to practice on, making them superb clinicians. When it comes to grabbing the doctors from the cheap factories of Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, the rich countries forget the ethics that they preach to us. They have colonized us for centuries and they continue to exploit us. Today, the neo-colonization of the low and middle income countries is by taking the jewels of our nation, like they took the Kohinoor without payback, emptying one-man stations of cardiologists, anesthetists, radiologists, leaving the people who funded for their education to die. Ladies and gentlemen, we will expose the underbelly of the global intellectual exploitation industry and prove the motion before the House to be true. That healthcare needs of the people should take precedence, a priority, a preference over the right of doctors to emigrate, and in no way are we suggesting that emigration should be banned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Samkrishna, for keeping to time. Let me now invite Dr. Ajit Amarasinghe from the opposing team to open the debate.
Shaman sir, ladies and gentlemen, I think your hearts would have got stimulated by the. I am going to stimulate your brains. See, I think once we start a debate, what is needed is that we analyze topic, what is given in the debate in full. What is said here is healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the right of doctors to live. So it says specifically healthcare needs. Now when you take healthcare systems of the world, there are two types of systems. You have need-based healthcare system and service-based healthcare systems. Our country has a service-based healthcare system. That's why by spending $200 per capita, we have been able to maintain an excellent healthcare, which is service-based, equivalent to countries who are spending 20-30 times of our country. Now let me explain the difference between a service-based healthcare system and a need-based healthcare system. Service-based healthcare system provides the healthcare essential to people of that country. It should be medical care, surgical care, preventive health care, medications. But when it comes to need-based healthcare system, what is taken precedence? The patient satisfaction. Now the problem is whether we are capable of having a need-based healthcare system with the present amount of spending in health. It is impossible. When we are spending $200 per capita, United States is spending 12,000 US dollars per capita on healthcare. UK is spending 6,000, Australia 6,000. Now what is proposed by the other team is that the doctor should not immigrate until we meet the needs of healthcare needs of people, which is near impossible. Because even if there are adequate number of doctors in the country, we are incapable of providing the needs of people unless more money is spent on healthcare. There are more nurses, there are more laboratories, there are more psychologists and many more medical persons. Now that is one point that I would make, is that it's a near impossible task, even if we have enough number of doctors in this country. Now, are we having enough number of doctors? Yes, we are having enough doctors. By which standards? By WHO standards. By WHO standards, it is said if you have 100 doctors per 100,000 population, that is the WHO standard of having adequate number of doctors. We currently have 123 doctors per 100,000 people. So we have already exceeded the number of the standards set out by the WHO. Now, what about this crisis of immigration? I saw about 1 year back, there was an article in a newspaper to say 1,400 doctors immigrated out of this country, and this is posing a crisis. Now, what is not mentioned here is that during those 3 years, from 2020 to 2022, while 1,400 doctors migrated out of this country, the state universities of this country produced 3,600 doctors. So we have excess. Now, the argument may come that the doctors who are immigrating out of the country are trained doctors or specialists. There's no specific data on this. My presumption is that most of them are junior doctors. Now, even the data was analyzed by taking the number of certificates of good standing issued by Sri Lanka Medical Council. That is not correct. I take a certificate of good standing once in 3 years to show to my wife. So that she show that I have a good track record. So I don't think that's correct. Now, as I said, there's an excess or surplus of doctors. That is actually was explained by the Secretary of the GMOA in the month of September last year, where he said that in 2 years to come, we will have 2,000 doctors passing out from state universities alone. And we will not have enough internship jobs. So what we will have is not a crisis of dearth of doctors, but a crisis of surplus of doctors in this country. So I think my time is over. So about the doctor's right to immigrate, I think my second speaker will talk on, and then we'll continue with the debate. So as I said, what we have what we have now is not a crisis of migration, but a crisis of employment or surplus of doctors in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we'll have for the proposing team, Ms. Melanie Gunathilaka.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So before going ahead with the topic, I think it's important to begin with clarity that we are not attacking the doctor's right to immigrate. We understand the powerful pull of dignity, security, and improved quality of life for everyone. Doctors and healthcare workers who leave, we don't see them as traitors, we don't see them as selfish people. We see them as casualties of a broken system that failed to support, adequately pay, or to protect their futures. This crisis is a complicated one, and it involves many connected problems, not just national, but global. It's not only about individual people or specific hospitals. These cases are tied to big worldwide factors, economical, historical, and environmental. Countries like Sri Lanka are facing several serious problems happening at the same time. Experts sometimes call this as a polycrisis, meaning many emergencies piling up together. And we know, during emergencies is when our morals are tested. These problems should not be looked at alone, but they should be addressed together as a whole, holistically. So Sri Lanka's healthcare system did not fail overnight. Despite severe resource constraints and multiple crises, it has shown remarkable resilience and relative strength. It's a testament to the dedication and hard work of our doctors and medical staff, who have kept essential services running under great pressure. A key driver to this collapse is a global obsession with growth at any cost. Gross domestic product measures how much a country produces but ignores harm caused to the environment, communities and healthcare. GDP counts building projects or mining asset progress but overlooks pollution, displaced people and underfunded hospitals. Another example, I will explain this in a simple way. So if you take a company that produces rubber gloves while polluting drinking water of a community, that community will have to go to a private hospital or a public hospital to have their healthcare needs met. But this price is not included in the production cost of the gloves or in the price that it's sold in the market. It's paid by the people, it's socialized. And this is not calculated in the GDP counting. And at the same time, IMF and other global financial institutions require countries like us to cut government spending and restructure our money so we can start repaying our debt. And these conditions are called austerity and structural adjustment programs. This means less and less money for healthcare and more money for paying back loans. So this leads to fewer medicines, worse infrastructure and shrinking workforce. Sri Lanka's struggles goes back to colonization. Debt traps where countries borrow money and spend years to repaying it. This limits our investments in people. And unfair trade rules keep countries like ours stuck in cycles of poverty and underdevelopment. Meanwhile, richer countries recruit our best trained doctors, professionals and educated with great public expense by Sri Lankan taxpayers. And climate crisis adds on to this heavy burden of countries in global south like Sri Lanka. We did not create climate crisis, but we suffer the most. Richer nations produce most pollution, but face fewer immediate effects. Rising temperatures, floods, droughts, and more disease outbreaks are issues that we face while having to work within a fragile healthcare system. Even worse, climate change raises healthcare problems, but debt limits our ability to respond. This is not a technical problem. It's a question of justice, rights, and power. The powerful pollute while the powerless pay. Professor Julian Allwood of Cambridge reminds us that migration, climate, and inequality are linked like a chain. This polycrisis is a mix of climate collapse, economic hardships, and unfair systems working together. And the great medical migration is draining Sri Lanka's healthcare system. Since 2020, thousands of doctors and specialists have left. In the first 6 months of 2022, over 400 doctors applied to emigrate. We invest nearly $22 million each year in our medical education. So when doctors leave, that investment is lost. And also Sri Lanka is aging quickly. By 2040, 1 in 4 will be over 60. Chronic diseases like diabetes, cancer, and heart disease are rising. But our hospitals face growing pressure. Debt repayments, again, squeezes our health budget. So let us be clear. Doctors have rights, so do patients. Real freedom is not just the right to live, it is the right to stay and thrive. We want policies that make staying worthwhile. Fair pay, career growth, and better working conditions. And it also means global accountability. Wealthier nations must stop draining our systems and begin supporting global health equity. This also includes debt cancellation, climate reparations, new economic systems that prioritize the well-being of the people over profit. And our opponents were talking about this difference between the needs-based healthcare and service-based healthcare. And the difference between these two is how the success is measured, mostly. In needs-based healthcare, patient-centered outcomes are focused, but in service-based healthcare, the type of healthcare is provided and no direct assessments of patients' health are carried out. So this doesn't mean that we are debating over two different types of healthcare needs. We are talking about the healthcare needs of Sri Lanka and globally, especially in global south, in the poor countries. And I think it goes without saying, the needs of the many always comes first than the needs of an individual. And we are not talking about a ban again. We are talking about better conditions that supports everybody's right to a better life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Now from the opposing team, Dr. Manudevi Dhanapachirana, Registrar in Medicine, National Hospital of Sri Lanka. Sorry, Senior Registrar in Nephrology.
Thank you, Madam. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now listened to two very passionate yet irrelevant pleas from the proposition. They've made their arguments extremely sensational on the part of the first speaker, and on the part of the second speaker, they've made it extremely irrelevant. The part of the speech by the second speaker focused 3/4 of the speech on things that are loosely related to medicine and systemic failures, and yet completely ignored the topic at hand. Of course, she loosely addressed it and said that they're not banning the rights of doctors, but they're calling for a precedence, where the healthcare needs of the people take precedence over the rights of the doctors to migrate. So what are you really saying? What do you want the doctors to do? If the healthcare needs of the people take precedence over the rights of doctors to migrate, what is it that you're asking doctors to do, if not stay? She spoke of systemic failures, and this works in our favor. I'll come back to this. But I'd like to thank the proposition at the outset for making very passionate pleas with a few numbers thrown here and there, probably to garner a bit of credibility on the part of from the audience. The opposition, meanwhile, has had two premises in their argument. One, as my first speaker said, the crisis is overly exaggerated and misdirected to the point where the doctors are shown to be the scapegoats or the responsible party in order to carry the burden of evicting the crisis that we have. The second premise that we have, that I will be speaking of, is even if this healthcare crisis does exist to begin with, it does not justify the proposition solution of holding the doctors hostage and taking away their rights to migrate. Now, can healthcare needs of people truly take precedence over the doctor's rights to migrate? Obviously, it cannot. But for the favor of the proposition, I will explain this to you in three simple points. Point number one, ladies and gentlemen, doctors are people too. And since our proposition seems to care so much about people, humanity, and rights of patients, why not care about the rights of doctors? They themselves said that under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, any person or party has the right to freely mobilize in and out of their country. Perhaps the proposition would like a little reminder that this universal declaration involves and includes doctors as well. Perhaps the proposition also would like a little reminder that having a state-funded medical education, having the poor pay for your education, having your profession be in demand at this imaginary crisis does not revoke your rights. They spoke of things like war, they spoke of things like the COVID crisis. How is that relevant here? The crisis that we have at hand is not big enough, and the crisis that we have at hand, like they themselves pointed out, is not necessarily a mere crisis of doctors. It's a crisis of a systematic failure where you need things apart from doctors for the system to run. You need essential medicines, you need proper policies, proper infrastructure, proper facilities in hospitals. What is the point in having so many doctors staying in the country if the doctors cannot continue to function? How are the doctors going to take away the lack of essential medicines at the hospitals for them to prescribe to their patients? If you're asking doctors to stay in a system that exploits them, if you're asking the doctors to stay in a system that is broken beyond repair, you, my friends, are not asking for a precedence. You, my friend, are not asking for ethical responsibility. All you're asking is for martyrdom on the part of the doctors. And I can't for the life of me fathom why our crusaders for human welfare over here would request this of us. Second point, a happy doctor is a better doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, we are a group of educated professionals. What we want for our society is an effective and a sustainable healthcare system, and not the healthcare system, not the sort of healthcare system where we hold our doctors hostage and get them to carry the burden of a broken system. What we want is a system
that functions and a system that carries its doctors and its patients forward. Why are we making doctors the scapegoats for this broken system? Why are we imposing the responsibility fully on the doctors, and why are we pointing responsibility fully towards the migration of doctors when, like you yourself said, there are so many factors affecting this crisis? I would like to ask the proposition, why is it that the healthcare needs of people need only doctors to say? Why not focus on other problems, right? And why are we, I know the second speaker made an allusion to this, but again, that is not the topic that we're debating at hand, right? So if you are asking, if you are not imposing a ban, if you are not asking doctors to stay, what are you really asking for with regards to the topic at hand? Which brings me to my third and final point. The need to emigrate is always a symptom and never the root cause. This has been the crux of our argument thus far, right? There is no point in just focusing only on the doctors when you need so many other factors to play at hand. I know this topic has been very emotional for everyone involved, but I think we should also take a step back and realize that emotion must not blind us to justice. If you're speaking of justice for patients, why should that mean injustice for our doctors? Thank you.
Thank you, Manodi. Now we have the last speaker for the proposition, Dr. Teakshan Patilana, who is a consultant oncological researcher, very much in demand area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and dear opponents and my dear team. So I think they tried to simulate the brain. I don't know which part of it. I don't think he entered the peripheral nervous system even while it talks. So let me tell you one thing. We're talking about precedents. We're not talking about a solution. We're not talking about even now. This topic does not say currently Sri Lanka doesn't say anything about it. We're talking about healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the rights of the doctors to immigrate. When precedence comes, you are at a stretch where you have to pick one or the other. Which one takes precedence? Which one takes priority? It's the rights of the people. We've proven it through the human rights. There are clauses in all the human rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, ICCPR, everything states what trumps first. And the morality, the social contract the doctors have, and the financial investment, we've gone through all that. The financial investment of the countries do have a say. They have to spend so much, so there is a reason why healthcare needs of the people should take precedence. So the second speaker was worrying and asking about what are solutions. Let me give you the solutions. Let me give you the data as well. 2021, GMC and the University of Plymouth did a paper, Drivers of Migration of Doctors. They looked at what are the options, what are the reasons why people move. People move because of the reasons that they mentioned, true. But what are the solutions? The low and middle income countries like Sri Lanka, we are not asking to put a ban. We'd say strengthen the peripheral centers, give them the equipment, give them the infrastructure that's needed, incentivize the doctors who are working in the periphery, give them priority when they come to the country from foreign training, etc. Give them better access. This topic does not say ban immigration of doctors. It doesn't say anything like that. So we would say if there are some specialties who find it difficult to get jobs, so make the governments have bilateral or multilateral ties with other countries and get them jobs, so that at the end of the day they will come back, have a return on service schemes like the bond that we have. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but that is a way that you retain people or make them return to the country, and also by doing the things that I mentioned, which are proven on paper, and it's studies which have shown and agreed by different authorities that these work. And also a circular migration through bilateral and multilateral agreements. So what can the high-income countries do? They can respect the code. There is a global code for recruitment of doctors from other countries. There are certain countries that you cannot, should not be permitted to be recruited. Example, Zimbabwe. There are a red list, an amber list, and a green list. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not talking about Sri Lanka in this topic. It says a concept. Healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the rights of the doctors who might immigrate. Yes, this has been proven, agreed upon, WHO, Universal Declaration of Human Rights all agree. So, apart from that, apart from the moral factors, the human rights, and the financial investment, there's a wastage of skill as well. The doctors who are trained, highly trained doctors, go and do certain jobs that doesn't yield their best outcome. So they do not live up to their potential. Example, the PNG article from 2016 says there is differential attainment in UK postgraduate medical training amongst BAME community, that is black and minority ethnic groups, and the INGs. Let me reiterate the INGs. So they end up all investment by trade, but not just with money, but the training is also lost. So we are saying, as healthcare needs of the people matter, we do take measures to keep the people inside, but not by putting bans, by making them wanting to stay. So let's take a real life example. The great exodus happened in sub-Saharan Africa. Lots of doctors left because of different reasons, including remuneration, civil rights, etc. So all the countries lost their doctors, and all of them lost money because of the money lost because of training. But there's one country that changed their tact, Rwanda. They lost 43% of their medics at one point, but they did some changes. The changes that I mentioned, giving a good remuneration, giving a social status, giving access to better schools, etc. And their numbers changed. So am I just giving my theory? You know, this comes from the Center for Global Development study that shows that this tact works. Why did they do that? Because they understood the healthcare needs of the people takes precedence over the rights of doctors to migrate and over anything else. So because we are a community at the end of the day, and we need to protect that. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we've been hearing good arguments, but I've heard better arguments from a painting of a toddler, seen better arguments from a painting of a toddler. So thank you very much for all of you for listening. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Teekshana. Next speaker from the opposing team is Dr. Christy Xavier, Nemo Mental Health Base Hospital, Thalapale.
Chairperson, members of the proposing team and members of the opposing team, and my dear audience. So as third speaker, let me try to untangle some of the confusion that has been caused throughout this debate. So we started the debate with the proposition coming here and telling us that they do not wish to curtail the rights of doctors, but rather they are talking about patients' rights and doctors' rights. But it's very unclear what exactly their stance here is. They say that they do not want to ban immigration. So I assume that what they're trying to do essentially is to guilt doctors into not leaving by saying that, you know, we owe this debt of gratitude to the people of this country, we owe this debt of gratitude to the Nadama. And then the first speaker also spoke about free education and how the doctors have gotten so much from free education. And that was another reason why we should not allow, or rather why doctors' rights to migrate is not uphill. But later on, the second speaker and the third speaker seem to suggest that they are not really talking about Sri Lanka, but they're talking about a very general context. So this confusion over the context of this debate has been one of the biggest problems in this debate. So when you talk about free healthcare, when you talk about Nadama, and then tell us that, you know, this debate is not happening in Sri Lanka, I do not know what exactly the position of the proposition is, and that has been one of the reasons why there has been so much of confusion. Then the second reason that they have brought up is about the rights and the limits. So they themselves quoted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they said that the rights of doctors have certain limits. And to some extent we agree with this. There are certain limits to rights, and in certain situations of crisis, rights can be limited, such as in the case of COVID, which was a good example that they brought up. But in order to curtail the rights, or in order to say that the rights should not take precedence, you really need to show that there is a real crisis that exists. And this is exactly what we questioned from the opposition in our very first speech, where we said, where is this crisis that they talk about? Is there really a crisis of service? Or are they trying to build up this argument to talk about a needs-based system? Because in terms of services, Sri Lanka has kept its services functioning at a very high standard, even with much less doctors than are currently in the system. And right now, even by WHO standards, we clearly showed you with statistics that we have an adequate number of doctors. So then, what is the other point that they specifically spoke about? They told that we have a certain responsibility to the people who funded the free education that doctors benefited from. Now, this unpayable debt that they talk about, right? Because at what point do doctors pay this debt? Do doctors working internship for one entire year at 50,000 rupees salary a month, doing on-call 24/7, does that repay this debt? Or does working for 5 years repay this debt? Or is this like a lifelong debt that doctors need to pay and never emigrate? Because this unpayable debt, even the first speaker talked about how doctors need to feel guilty or need to feel that they have this debt to society. That is not really a fair expectation of doctors. And my second speaker clearly explained why a system that guilts doctors this way or coerces doctors this way doesn't produce the best healthcare. Doesn't produce the best healthcare. And the Natama would rather prefer that his doctor is happy to be there and treat him than to feel guilty to stay in this country. So even in the argument of rights versus responsibility, I think we carry the debate. Then the second speaker and the third speaker really spoke about the systemic issues. They told that there are a lot of systemic issues in Sri Lanka, and these are one of the reasons why doctors are migrating, which we completely agree with. And so I think that really falls on the side of the opposition, because we also say that there are systemic issues, and that is why doctors are migrating, and we are all for incentives. So increasing the incentives to retain doctors is actually a great solution, and we actually support that. But I do not see why you need to put precedence of healthcare needs over the rights of doctors in order to do that. If you incentivize doctors, the doctors who really wish to stay would stay, and the doctors who still wish to migrate would migrate. And that is the right to migrate that we're talking about. So I do not see how incentivizing and building up this system really is a point that scores in favor of the proposition. In fact, let me give a quick example. In 1995, in the middle of the war in Jaffna, there was a crisis of doctors, and people were made to evacuate from Jaffna, and there were only a few people who remained in Jaffna. And there was a group of doctors who decided that they were going to stay in Jaffna and keep the Jaffna hospital open as long as there were civilians there. Now, these doctors were only a group of people. There were doctors who left. So these doctors stayed because they thought that they owed a responsibility to those people. Now, are we going to guilt those doctors who left? No, because they had different priorities. Different people have different priorities at different points in their life. Some doctors who stayed in Jaffna and protected people and worked for people at that time later on made the decision to migrate. And that is how human life works. People have different points in their life where they make different decisions, and those are based on the priorities that they have at that time. So, what we really need to understand is that rights are not like mangoes that come during seasons, right? Rights are something that are ultimate, they are fundamental. And the right to move, in fact, is a very fundamental right, and therefore we should not put that, that should not be, the patient's healthcare needs should not take precedence over that right. So we have clearly shown to you that there is no real crisis that justifies restricting these rights. And we have also shown you that restricting such rights is not the right way to solve this. Restricting those rights or even guilting doctors is not the right way to solve this problem.
Thank you. Let's end the main round. Now it's the turn of the two leaders to round up 4 minutes each. Let me call Ajit Kamarasinghe for the opposition. 4 minutes, please.
Thank you. I think the leader of the proposing team at the very beginning set the goalpost at a point, which was Sri Lanka. So I kicked the ball. The third speaker is coming and saying, no, it's not Sri Lanka. We are talking about some kind of a utopian country where the healthcare needs of people are important than immigration of doctors. See, we are in Colombo, we are in Sri Lanka, we are talking about the healthcare needs of the people of this country. So as I said at the very outset, the proposing team is proposing to change the currently service-based healthcare system to a need-based healthcare system by keeping more and more doctors in Sri Lanka, which is impossible because to do that, you have to pump in more money to the system, employing more other categories of workers, which is impossible. The country can't pump in more money into the healthcare system because Sri Lanka is one of the 2 or 3 countries in the world at the moment which is in bankruptcy. And the second speaker, I would say, is very anti-international agency oriented, and she was talking about curtailing these agencies coming and curtailing the healthcare funding, which is actually not correct. For last 20 years, we have been spending 3 to 3.6% of the GDP on healthcare, and even in bankruptcy, what the international agencies suggested was that you should not curtail the spending on healthcare and education, and that was not done. And if you look at last 20 years, the healthcare spending per capita has actually quadrupled. 20 years back, it was $40 per capita per person per capita spending on healthcare. Now it's close to $200 per capita, as I said. But this $200 in comparison to developed countries is very low. Why are we not capable of increasing that? We don't have a good GDP. We don't have a good GDP because this country is not developing. Country is not developing not because of doctors. Country is not developing because we don't have proper policies. So unless the country is developed, healthcare cannot be improved. If the healthcare cannot be improved, even if we have adequate number of doctors, we can't provide a better healthcare service. As I said, when it comes to number of doctors, in 2007, we had only 10,000 doctors in the country. In 2018, we had 22,000 doctors. So are we not having enough? How many can we have in this country? How many can we have in this poor country without burning the system? Now all these doctors are being absorbed into the government sector, and if the international agencies become aware that we are already exceeded the WHO standards of doctor population ratio of 100 doctors per 1,000, they would definitely say, stop employing doctors in the government sector. So if we curtail the immigration of doctors, what we will have is a problem of unemployment, which is a bigger problem than the sensation created by so-called crisis created by immigration of doctors. So there is no such crisis, as I said. The doctor numbers are increasing. We are producing more doctors than the number of doctors who are waiting, and this is a superficial notion created by the population and interested parties to say that our healthcare system is collapsing because the doctors are in it, which is not correct. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hadi Thomason. Our next speaker is from the leader from the proposing team, Dr. Santosh Shabanand. That will be the final speech in this debate.
Ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the opposition says that in my utopian Sri Lanka, there is no crisis. That we are talking about a utopian country and we are in imagination state. In his utopian country, there is no crisis. In his utopian country, the secretary of the GMOA, who is the source of this information, says there is no problem. And ladies and gentlemen, let's not revisit all the things GMOA has told about, many things about national policy over the decades. I wouldn't call them the most verifiable source of information. In his utopian country, this country doesn't have a crisis. 1,488 doctors have gone out, immigrated from this country between 22 to 24. 20% of the PGIM trainees have not come back to our country. 300 freshly graduated medical students, graduates of medicine did not accept the appointment letters for internship. 75 doctors did not accept the post-intern appointments, but in his utopian country, there is no problem. He is talking about a head-to-head ratio of WHO doctor to population. But whom are we losing? We are losing the highly skilled neurosurgeons, surgeons, anesthetists, radiologists, psychiatrists. Do you think that just because you have a head-to-head ratio okay for the WHO, the RHO is going to do brain surgery, the intern is going to do psychiatry? So in his utopian country, all these things are very well sorted because the secretary of the GMOA says there is no problem in Sri Lanka. And then the second speaker goes on to say, happy doctor is a better doctor, happy wife, happy life kind of logic. This logic apparently also applies to the leader of the opposition because his wife wants some good standing some certificate. So this happy wife, happy life thing doesn't work for a country which is at the crisis level, where we are losing $41.5 million per year in the exodus of doctors, and we cannot afford to do so. And so also, they seem to think that happiness, as in like a dancing, happy, lovely girl type of happiness, is the mandate of being a doctor. The very construct, the very premise, the very covenant of being a doctor is that you surrender some of your happinesses, some of your privileges, some of your personal life for the sake of mankind. And if you cannot make that commitment, ladies and gentlemen, please do not become doctors who serve humanity in a country which is grappled with economic devastation, death, loans, and devastation. In his utopian country, of course, none of this is happening. Ladies and gentlemen, the third speaker of the opposition says, what would the Natani want when, an unhappy doctor or a happy doctor? Right now, the poor, underprivileged, marginalized people have a choice not between a happy doctor and an unhappy doctor, but a doctor and no doctor. And this is why we are saying the community and his health, their health rights have to take precedence over the individual rights of doctors to migrate. And they're saying that we are not talking about Sri Lanka, all we have said is that it is a bigger global picture where the developed world is just sourcing highly trained doctors at a cheap rate because it is very, very expensive for them to make doctors. For example, Trump goes around imposing tariffs on everything on the developed world, including Sri Lanka. But when they have to they import tariffs if we want to import something. But when they want to import our doctor, no tariff, no nothing. They will just take it, just the way the colonizers took our holy notes, they took our natural resources, they decimated our cultures, and they made us believe that we are inferior to them. And this is the global industry of intellectual exploitation applicable to Sri Lanka, applicable to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we reiterate that the healthcare needs of the people should take precedence over the right of doctors to emigrate. Not a ban, but let's talk about the communities that are for that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for sticking to time. Well, it was all worthwhile, isn't it? SLMS spent 2 or 3 weeks selecting this topic. Another 2 weeks fine-tuning it. Still, I heard today that over the social media, a lot of people are criticizing it. Then having fine-tuned it, we spent at least 4-5 weeks getting these speakers from as far away as Tellepilli to Colombo. And we have got somebody from the private sector, from the government sector, ladies, gentlemen, from humanities, and a layperson, all that. And now I am going to divulge. I spoke to some of their spouses also. I couldn't speak to all 6, at least to 4 of them. And in each case, mostly the ones for whom you gave a big applause, their spouses said, yes, please take, please take. I have no peace at all. So, they have put so much of effort in this, and at the end of that, both sides are equally convincing. I don't know whether to stay or leave. Anyway, as I said earlier, let's see how the audience feels. Hands up those who still feel that the rights of the patient should take precedence over the right, fundamental right of the doctors to leave. Those who still feel. About 14, 15, 17, 18. Well, the other way around, those who feel that the doctors should get preference, should allow them to leave. Looks like the proposals have won, looks like. Right, we'll wait and see. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. And I'm sure it was a very entertaining debate. Thank you very much.
That was fun.
Thank you very much for all in the audience. And let me obviously thank all speakers in the proposing team as well as in the opposing team. And we all know that it was the most informative and interesting debate that made an impact on the audience to change the opinion of the audience. So I think that it was a successful effort from the Sri Lanka Medical Association. And as it was mentioned beginning, as it was a friendly debate, let them shake hands.
How can you?
And to award them with the letters of appreciation. So let me call Dr. Shantusha Manadu to receive the letter of appreciation from Dr. Sarat Gamini. Dr. Melanie Gulekar. Dr. T. Sana Khatun. Dr. Anandi Vidana Khatun.
Adit Amrasinghe, please. And Dr. Christy Say. Thank you very much.
Hi. Nice seeing you. See you soon. Yes, nice.
Sir, wait.